Hey everybody, Connor here from the Straight from a Scientist podcast, where we connect you directly with real researchers working on a variety of science disciplines. Even with the best intentions, science journalism can be a game of telephone. So we're going to cut the cord and let you listen in directly on what these experts are working on. Today's episode is another divergence from the typical SFS interview format we've been pulling lately. We're experimenting with a bunch of different styles of podcasting, so let us know your thoughts on the website at straightfromascientist.com or leave us a review on iTunes and let us know how you're feeling. In this episode, I had a very fun conversation with Lowell from Learning with Lowell.
Hello, this is Lowell with the Learning with Lowell Science Podcast. I made this podcast after surviving an illness, and I wanted to make something that would get other people excited about the sciences, see what is out there, and hear from the people that are leading these initiatives, founders of companies, people like George Church, you name it. That's really what I get into.
This is a podcast that is basically the industry equivalent of Straight from a Scientist. This episode was really all about our experience as podcasters in general, and you get a great reflection of our interests personally as well as scientifically in this podcast.
See that little blinky thing? See it? Top left? Top
Sorry,
left?
the app got so small. Oh yeah, I see you're recording.
Okay. Just as like a food for thought, that's how you know you're being recorded by me. By the government, they don't let you know that, so I just wanted you to let you know.
That's always happening. You've seen the Amazon suggestions,
Yeah,
Facebook ads after you talk to your friends about things.
we live in a weird time.
I know.
This is not related to anything we're going to talk about, but that Zuckerberg board thing was hilarious. I don't know if you listened to it, but I like
No,
to.
I haven't.
Well, too much time on my hand.
Bad.
It's more like I think Zuckerberg's a little socially awkward, and then
Oh, of course.
and then I think the people did not understand. Like these senators were just. I think it was like a square peg in a round hole, and they just kept trying to make it fit. And good on them for trying. It did not fit. I think people.
Oh, are you talking about the the C-SPAN broadcasts and stuff?
Yeah, like the hearing that they. Yeah, it's. I mean, they try. I know. Hire an expert to explain these things to you. But
yeah, they just don't have an understanding of the thing they're questioning him about. So I don't know what they're doing.
Well, makes it hard to govern, I suppose, with this type of technology. But all right, so let's get into actual interview stuff. So your name's Connor, right? Like just as a random thing, your name is Connor.
Yeah, there's Julian. That's also the
okay.
Straight from a Scientist.
Well, I keep in my head, I just have you as McGregor, so I just feel like that's not right.
No, I am not the MMA fighter.
Oh, so you claim, but
Yeah.
I've never, for people listening, if this makes it in, I've never seen the guy physically, so he could be Conor McGregor, who just is a science nerd in his free time. But
Damn straight.
so a question I have for you is: do you have any favorite episodes you've done? Like of the people you've interviewed, are there any that stand out as oh wow, I really enjoyed that conversation? It was really nice.
I've loved talking to everyone that we had on the podcast. To pick favorites, I think I'm definitely biased towards episodes in which I feel I have done a good job because I'm not an expert podcaster. I realize that I make errors all the time. And so I feel really good about episodes where I feel I ask the right questions and just let my guests do the talking and move the conversation towards areas where they want to really talk about. I haven't always done that. So I guess I'd say the episode 30 was a really recent one that comes to my mind where I feel like we really got in a great groove. It was super conversational, but at the same time, we got into the hardcore discussion of science and how that process actually evolves and how we actually handle that process in daily life. So for reference, episode 30 was Waylon Yu. He's a student at UNC, and we met together in one of the rooms in my building and just had a podcast in the middle of the afternoon on a Thursday, which was a lot of fun. And of course, it was great that we were in the same room together. So I think all of the ones when I can actually do a local interview, I feel I do a better job of that. I went to ComSciCon Triangle, which is RTP Triangle, Research Triangle Park in North Carolina. It's this huge, basically city of biotech in between three cities of Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill that all have schools in them, NC State, Duke, and UNC respectively, that contribute heavily to like the intellectual property and the technical elements behind all of these biotech startups. It's a really cool place to be. But I digress. Anyways, I'm at this convention, and all 4 of those interviews are also in person. I think it's a lot easier to connect with people when you are in person rather than over Skype, although we try, and in a lot of cases it still works out. So anyways, yeah, that's been my experience. I think episode 30 was great, especially recently, and I feel like I really got to talk to Waylon about it's kind of the good and bad side of science and that process, and also some of the fascinating work that he's doing in addiction, depression, and pain research, actually, considering that I didn't really realize that there are similar brain structures that regulate all 3 of those, and we might be able to identify like vulnerable populations to all 3 of these sort of vicious cycle disorders and ailments that people suffer from.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a lot of fun with that, and I'm looking forward to a lot of on-campus interviews that have been in the works for a while. They're a little harder to come by because everyone's got a busy schedule on campus, but yeah, they're definitely worth it when they happen. So, what about you? Favorite episodes and things you're really excited about, I guess.
I hate everyone. No, they're all great. Well, to follow up on a point that you made, I wish I could see more people more often. Like, I like seeing people in person. It's like, sometimes it's hard to attach on, like when you see like those visual cues, like you miss out a lot just like talking to someone like
For
over
sure.
just audio.
Yeah, I need to get a webcam on my desktop. I would use my laptop, but it's crashed before, and I don't want to take that risk ever again.
Yeah,
So.
George Church, who I recently interviewed, I had like 4 fail safes to talking with him, and like two of them I didn't have before, just because I was worried we were gonna have a problem, and every single one failed besides the last one. Like the last one was like, why is this not working? And when he got on, he was like, yeah, what's up? He was like completely calm, but like to me, I was like, oh God, I almost missed it, because it's like a really interesting person. He's in Siberia right now, and it's not a punishment. He's choosing to go there to play with woolly mammoths.
Are they really trying to clone them up there?
Well,
right?
Well, it is a bit of a misnomer, because they're not really bringing back the woolly mammoths. All they're doing, like if you think of it this way, they're taking Asian elephants, which are closely related to woolly mammoths, and they're just giving them characteristics of a woolly mammoth so that they can live in these tundra regions with permafrost. And I probably wondered, like, why would you do that? And their reasoning is, and there's a book called Woolly on this, but the reasoning is that the permafrost, which at the end of the last ice age, like there was lots of these big animals, like, going about their lives and, doing their stuff. And these researchers, Zimovs, there's like a father and son team in Siberia who have over the past 30 years been doing this research that like these big animals, herbivores that we just wiped out, 10,000 years ago, that when they're doing their daily business of like rutting up, eating stuff, what have you, it reduces the surface temperature of the permafrost by 20 Celsius. So that's, whatever in Fahrenheit. So that's quite significant. And the issue there is if the permafrost melts, it releases a crap ton of, that's, literal scientific measurement, a crap ton of methane into the atmosphere, which is worse than other types of greenhouse gases. And like it in of itself would like tip us over like those points that everyone is talking about. So they're trying to
doomsday scenario. Yep.
So they're basically extending the range of these Asian elephants, giving them characteristics of an extinct species that we killed, and then sticking them in these regions to one, they get more places to live, which is kind of nice. 2, reintroducing an ecosystem that's been dead for 10,000 years, and 3, reducing the surface temperature in these areas by up to 25 Celsius. But to answer your question, I'd say the ones that really jump out to me is James Feld. He is basically taken synthetic biology and artificial intelligence to make a protein generator. It would be like the simplest way to describe it. He was in Forbes' 30 Under 30. Really fantastic guy. He's in England, and he's the CEO of Lab Genius. The fun thing I liked about his episode is that he talks about how one of the biggest mistakes or learning opportunities he had was that he took PhD scientists and he tried making them salesmen. And as you imagine, that did not go well. And so like, not to say like really smart people can't learn, but at the same time, it's like if you have a limited amount of time and scarce resources, bring what people are really great at and like apply them effectively. And so, he learned how to do that. But it was just, it's funny to think, like, as you listen to that, it's like, oh, of course you wouldn't try to get like a professor of biology who spent 8 years trying to learn how to do something to now figure out how to sell people on things, which is very difficult if you've never done it before. Though to some extent, writing grants and the like are very similar. But the other one, which I always recommend, is Ben Paul's, and we talked about this in the pre-game, of Neuraloom, who's developing a way to interface with the brain, and it's fantastic. He's a really like fantastic guy. His episode, I believe, was 27. But I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, just a comment on why I think PhD scientists might not be the best salesmen inherently. It's just we're trained to constantly check ourselves, right? We're trained to constantly reevaluate ourselves and make sure that we're not overstepping or overpromising or in any respect overreaching on any experiments. And so it seems natural to me that this would not exactly be an asset when you're trying to sell something. And certainly when you're proposing a grant, you do have to consider, of course, the pitfalls of your research, but you do have to still forecast it in the best light possible. And so going back to that sort of structure of forming my words and my ideas is really refreshing and fun. I'm glad I was able to submit a grant on this August cycle. So fingers crossed on that. Maybe gave me a little sales experience for sure. But I did have some sales experience previous to that, but it wasn't biotech related in any respect. So
what did you sell?
I sold rental chairs on a beach as a lifeguard. They pretty much sold themselves at about midday sun.
Yeah, that's I mean, something I always am curious about when you're in a position like that. Why doesn't the person just add $1 to it? Like if they're like $14 and the place supplies them. I assume you worked with someone. You didn't just like do this. You didn't go to a beach somewhere. But
yeah, it was for a company.
Yeah. Like, why wouldn't you just add $1 to it? Or like, why doesn't anyone ever just add $1 to something like that and then just pocket the dollar as like a tip?
We heard of some people doing that, and they got caught and fired. But
like, what do they care? They're getting their money.
Yeah, the managers are pretty on top of it. You're supposed to advertise the price, and then if they don't like the price, there's companies that are a couple blocks down. They can always go and confer with them. But for the most part, yes, people are lazy, and it's probably pretty easy to take advantage.
I wouldn't say take advantage. I would say just a nice tip. But I have not done this either. It's just something I always wonder, like, why wouldn't someone? Apparently, they do it outside of America. Like in other countries, they'll like. America, we have like very fixed prices for a lot of things. Like you go down, like a gallon of milk is like $1.
Right. You don't have haggling in the United States, so.
Which I
gotta have a number on it.
Yeah, I wish we did. I think that'd be fun. It would make it really hard to go through Walmart if like just. I worked at Walmart for a while, so I'm like maybe having like a flashback of what that would be like. But it would just be fantastic. Like even if someone who worked at a Walmart before, I would generally enjoy to see people try to haggle over things. Just it would be fun. But
we're all about efficiency in America, though. It would take too much time. No one could ever get their business done.
It's true. Well, funnily enough, 2 points. Before we jump into this one, I just wanted I'll go into this one because the other one's kind of been sidetracked. But so in America, we actually have a high threshold for weird things popping up. So to give an example, when if like a train's 15 minutes late, Americans are like, yeah, okay. If a train is 15 minutes late in Japan or China, like someone is losing their job. And it's actually really funny. Well, not funny, maybe not the right word, but when people from Asia go to France to see Disneyland or Disney World, whichever one it is, they have a hotline for when people see it and are so disappointed they have breakdowns. So you can, like the Japanese people have set up a hotline, or the French people set up a hotline so that when they're in crisis, they can call someone and like be talked down as they are disappointed with how bad it looks.
I would never have guessed that.
Yeah. It's a very small world, but
the more you know.
But the funny thing that I was going to reference as well is that you mentioned how like scientists are very exact, and I've talked to on a lot of startups on my podcast, and they say how like because I've talked to people in Europe and I've talked to people in America, and pretty much everyone wants to talk like how Americans talk, and specifically like how American men pitch themselves in meetings, because apparently we're just the right amount of arrogant to factualness that everyone wants to emulate, to the point where like people who are from America will go over there and they'll pitch things, and people will come up to them afterwards and like, how did you learn to talk so confidently and like really pitch yourself? And they're like, what are you talking about? Like everyone, even the men over there, the men and the women, like they all admit that like they try to learn how to do that better, because like there's something about us that just makes us that like wild cowboy, like a little shy, a little shy of arrogance, I think. But it's really funny to hear them talk about it, and how like they're normally like, well, this is 99% probably going to happen, but they'll just sit there and like go on and on about the 1%, where in a lot of business meetings it's like, oh, this is a 50-50 chance of going to happen. Oh, that it's basically happened already. 50 chance. Like, why haven't I got my $10 million? Like, it's like too good of odds. Or a lot of
fake it till you make it mentality. Yeah, that's pretty much America in a nutshell, isn't it? Riding on a huge trade deficit and not giving it a rat's ass about it. Very American. I like it. Gonna adopt more of that style next time I give a talk. Be a little more brazen about it.
Well, it's like I've met people. There's like really bad arrogance, and there's just like people who are confident and maybe know how to like talk appropriately. Like it's not like they're lying, but it's more like they're mitigating the negatives in a way where like everyone knows they're doing it. Like if it's going to take 4 years, I'll say 2, just so that they get the funding, even though the people who are giving them the funding know that it's going to take 4. But if you say 4 years, they won't give you the money.
Right. Because then they think you mean 8 years.
Yeah, like it's like you got to like know how to like spin the plates just right, which is it's really interesting. But America's an interesting place. I don't know what are your demographics? Are they all from America, or do you get any from like other places?
Oh yeah, we get people from all over the world, with at least places in which there are scientific labs and research centers. So I think our total count for countries, probably like 4 or 5. Had some people on from the UK, some Spanish scientists, mostly United States, absolutely. And then I think one from New Zealand, if I'm not mistaken. So
that's fantastic. Did he go to Hobbiton?
Oh, no. None of these were, other than the one in Spain, none of them were local. So
No. I mean, like, did the guy in New Zealand go to Hobbiton?
Oh, I don't think that question was asked of her. It was a lady. Yeah, I'm blanking on the name right now, but I can pull it up.
I would have asked, but that's just because I ask weird questions sometimes. Like, if you're in New Zealand, you have to check out Hobbiton. Anyone who's a Lord of the Rings fan out there, like, please back me up on this. Like, you're already there. You're like 99% of the way there. Like, just finish it. What I would love to see, because I was, when I was in college, I was like a house leader, which is like a CA or an RA, like a community advisor for the residence halls, which I'm now conditioned to say when they only mean dorms, just the dorms. So like I kind of like oversaw like a bunch of students and made sure that they didn't like, die, which was actually quite hard because my school had a lot of shootings. But anyways,
Damn, I'm sorry to hear about that.
Yeah, I have like, well, they always like they quote it and say off-campus shootings, but I know exactly where these places are, and all those are students. So like they're students living right next to the campus where like the Greek Row people are, and it's like I know where this is. This is not like random civilians nearby. Like this is like clearly students. But
it's students killing each other, or is it like students being accosted and shot in the street?
I look at the news alert and I'm just like, oh, okay, and I just go about my day. It doesn't really get me down. But
are you based in Chicago, you said, or no?
Sorry. I'm near Chicago.
Okay, yeah, some of my friends have been to school there. They would consistently talk about gunshots being heard down the street and stuff like that.
It is weird.
Chirac.
It's true. I mean, there was a 4th of July where 80 people were killed.
Wow, that's yeah.
Well, the weird thing is in Chicago,
it's pretty rough.
There are more people in Chicago than there are in like Boston and the outlying there's like 3 to 9 million people in Chicago and the like the region. And that's not if you look at a map, like they're not even including a lot of places that I would consider a part of Chicago or like near Chicago, the suburbs. But if you look at the Boston region, like they have like somewhere between like 600,000 and like 3 million, and it's like not as like concrete and compact. I don't know why we're so angry out here. I cannot tell you, but I mean, I grew up in the country. I didn't like live in the city, so maybe I'd be much more angry if I lived in there. But
Grew up the entire time. Yeah, can
yeah,
imagine that, not having a quiet place to go every now and then, or at least know what a quiet place can do for you.
yeah. Well, you don't you live in like Connecticut or something?
Yeah, I'm in North Carolina.
All right, I don't know what's wrong with me. I kept thinking Connecticut. I also kept thinking in my head that I have you as like McGregor instead of Connor. So I mean, there might be something wrong with me. But what what is it about science that kind of like drew you to it? I mean, you could have been maybe like a successful accountant, which kind of uses science, maybe.
I should hope not. No, my uncle tried to talk me into being an accountant because he is an excellent accountant, and I knew that wasn't really my digs. I've seen all of the movies where I think in America a lot of people want to grow up and be like a businessman, an important like finance guy, or been recently watching Suits, a lawyer perhaps. No, for me, I was definitely very interested in life in general. I grew up in a pretty rural area of Northern Virginia, and I think that has a lot of an impact on the things I value today. And I had a very large space to run around with a bunch of kids in the woods and do a bunch of exploring. I had a lot of free time the first 6 years of my life. It's not like you have a whole lot of responsibilities at that age. And then that grew into kind of a fascination with plants and animal life. And I think a lot of people would be a biologist if it paid well. I myself might have done the same, but a natural first calling to me was veterinary medicine, or medicine in general, although I knew pretty early on that I wouldn't have been a great doctor, in that I would always want to argue with patients who clearly were not taking care of themselves properly. And that just doesn't fly in the current healthcare market. So animals can't talk back. Veterinary medicine was a great fit for me. I loved working with animals. I've had pets my whole life, of various species. And I started working at a vet hospital, gaining the experience that you need to go to vet school. I loved it in the day to day. Absolutely. It was like exciting. There was always new stuff coming in, new animals. And you're also working with people. Of course, the animals are the patients, but the owners bring them in, and you're conversing the entire time. It was pretty dynamic in terms of a day to day. But I did notice that the doctors, the actual vets, the people who I would aspire to be, were doing the same things week to week, month to month. And they had a set list of protocols and a set list of treatments they could administer. And beyond that, their hands were pretty much tied. And it seemed like it would grow boring after about 5 to 10 years. That didn't seem like a good long-term career for me. And so I was lost for a little while. This is, mind you, this is like my going into junior year of college. So I didn't have a whole lot of time left to pick a prospective career path if I wanted to change it drastically. Research really stood out to me as I took a couple of grad level courses, for really just one, neuroethology, which is the biological basis behind animal behavior. And that really captured me, in the sense that there's so much that we just don't know about a lot of neuronal systems, and just in general a lot about the brain. And to be able to discover a small part of that seems really appealing in terms of a lifelong goal. And while the things that I do day to day may be very mundane, especially compared to like working at a vet hospital or something like that, the week to week, the month to month is really vastly different and constantly progressing. And it's that constant progression that I think I've always had in my life, and wanted to build on moving forward in career aspirations. So
Well,
it's a bit of a story, I know, but that's kind of how I got here, and I've been loving it ever since. I mean, sure, long days in the lab suck sometimes, but long days at work suck anywhere. And yeah, it's all worth it when you get like a key result. I would say it's those moments in which things seem to fit together, and it's like you know it could, like, you have the fear that it could be too good to be true, and then you get enough data to realize that it's actually just true. So in any case, that's where I got on this journey. But what enticed you to take a neuroscience major? And do you see yourself moving forward with that, and perhaps moving in like synthetic? You said synthetic biology, right? possibly a synthetic biology master's or PhD even? And would those two kind of work together?
I really would like to follow up on what you said, but then I don't want to be rude and not answer your question.
Feel free to interrupt and stop me at any point.
No, like you just there's a. Well, I just wanted to say, like, you set yourself up very nicely to the where like you have a good day to day, but like in your free time you can go yell at people all the same. Like don't limit yourself. You know, like don't pigeonhole. That's all.
That's what hobbies are for.
Yeah, but I think the thing that I think would probably drives you nuts as someone who would know this much better than me is that I think there was some research that came out that something like 80% of dementia-related cases would go away if people ate and exercised and made smart choices when they were younger.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when you know what the end conclusion is going to be, like I think it's like I would find it hard not to yell at someone who's like, you know where they're going to be in like 20, 40 years. Like there's a good chance for it. Mm-hmm. It's like, just like is the donut really worth potentially getting Alzheimer's? Or like this not like it's like that one donut's going to be.
Yeah, I know.
But it's like, it's one of those things that bugs me too. Cause like especially when I see people like in the 40s or 50s and their parents had Alzheimer's, I'm like, oh,
mm-hmm.
I don't want to be doing that.
And they're just pounding cheeseburgers. Yeah. Look, I love a good cheeseburger. I love a good donut, but everything's got to be in balance, right? And I think I have a really good understanding because of the reading that I do. And it's been a long time interest of mine, even before I got really into the fields of neuroscience. I switched, by the way, when I decided I wanted to be a researcher rather than veterinarian. I added a biochemistry major, something a little more technical, and got really fascinated with like drug chemistry and just like the biochemistry of nutrition. So all this stuff, yeah, you're saying it's really pertinent to me. And you know, when I see someone who's clearly struggling health-wise, and they could easily be my age, but they're already showing signs of aging. It's tough. But how do you, like, say you're on the street, do you just walk up to them and say, hi, how you doing, sir? I noticed you have a bag of like fried chicken there. Why don't you eat a salad instead? Like, how do you even have that conversation? So I think part of what I want to do with the podcast is teach people why you should actually take care of your body. Like, teach people the direct effects of their actions, show them the science, show them the data, show them it's tested, because I think there's kind of a lot of head stuffing into the sand. I don't know, there's a blissful ignorance. There's a lot of blissful ignorance with this kind of stuff, right? It's very easy to brush it off and be like, we don't really know that these are bad for me, or like everyone's different, and this is the age of personalized medicine, and my genetics can handle it, or something like that. It's pretty easy to take science and put it on your side of an argument that lets you eat a donut if you're trying to rationalize it, right? So what I would try to do is expose people to the real science that shows that, hey, some of this stuff is not great for you, and to actually nail down the mechanisms by which people are hurting themselves by, let's say, ethanol exposure, right, in early development or something like that. Binge drinking can be really harmful, or TBI, brain damage, and how that actually works, so people can understand and really come to terms with what they're doing to themselves. And I think if you see that right in front of your face, you see the consequences of your actions right in front of your face, and you see the examples of it, it can get a little easier to make the right choice. And I mean, like donuts, we keep using them as an example. They're damn tempting, man. It's sometimes very hard, and I eat very healthy. Like I eat a really balanced diet, but sometimes you want what your body craves.
Yeah, which is kind of a good segue into answering your question. So the reason I liked neuroscience, trying to like decide like the most efficient way to answer this question. There's like two big things I'd say. One was when I was very young. I grew up in the country as well, or rural. I don't know how to describe it right. No, like my closest neighbor is like 2 miles away.
Wow.
And I love that. I would like to go back to that life, but the screaming babies are no fun. There was this movie called Silence of the Lambs. I don't know if you're familiar with it, But in the movie, they use like profiling, and like the Hannibal guy uses his brain to figure out other people's brains and like figure out what they're going to do in advance. And I really thought that was really enthralling. This idea that if you worked really, really hard and you really paid attention to the people around you, you could understand them well. And like, even though it's like a very negative thing, like, oh, you know, I used to tell that to people all the time, but then they look at me like, it was the killing that interested you. It's like, no, just the idea that you can understand people better. Because fundamentally, like the people in the movie, they understood like these, you know, the negative people, but you could also understand good people. Like they just apply it to the people that are doing bad things because, you know, there's an end result that's quicker to see. But you could also use it to understand people doing something unhealthily and trying to understand the root cause of it to help them go a different route. And so around this time as well, my grandfather was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And so seeing him, like this guy at the time of his life where like he gave like a lot of his life to supporting his family and being like a good man. And so seeing him at the time of his life where he should be retiring and enjoying his grandchildren and just like whatever he wanted, you know, he earned it.
Just getting back, yeah.
Yeah, just to see that stripped away from him. And to the point where he'd look at his daughters and he would be like, who are you? Why are you in my house? And then he'd remember for like that moment, and you could just like see it play across his face, like how horrible that was for him and for everyone, you know. But like for someone like him who's like in that role of like taking care of people to like not even remember them. But so like
to next to nothing. Yeah, it's devastating.
Yeah, so like those two things made me really want to understand the brain. Understanding why people are crazy, and then seeing what I can do to help bring balance to the world as the avatar. but
I was so sure you were gonna say Force there.
Yeah, well, you know, it's too on the nose, I feel like. But I've been watching my girlfriend I live with her, and I bought her like a bunch of appas. I don't know if you've ever seen that TV show, but she has a bunch of flying appas, like the big plush things. They're really adorable. I don't know if you're into stuffed animals, but so like I see them every day. So like more than Star Wars, I've been converted. But yeah, that drew me into neuroscience, and the change to synthetic biology, like my interest in that, I think started when I was in college and I was in the last few years, and this is what stopped me from getting my PhD, would be Dr. Lowell right now, but or maybe not. I don't know. There's a lot of chances with that. I basically was diagnosed with this. I don't know how you can say you were diagnosed with an undiagnosed illness, but I had an illness that kept trying to kill me every week, and I was in the ICU. And to give you an example of how annoying the ICU is, the first time I woke up in the ICU, the nurse was really happy, right? And like I was like, okay, you know, having a nice day, and no, like too happy, like weirdly happy. And so like when you see someone weirdly happy and at work and in that type of situation, you're going to ask, why are you so happy? Like, not that I don't want people to be happy, but she explained that over the course of 20 years of being an ICU nurse, I was the first person to leave alive.
Wow.
Period. And I was like, lady, you don't put any more substances in my body. I want a new nurse. Because like maybe she was like the angel of death or something. But she just laughed.
Some of those nurses.
Yeah, like 20 years, no one leaves. Like that's like I'm helping. Like, I think I can make it out of here. I don't know if I like get to the wheelchair fast enough. But so at this time, like I was going through all that, and no one knew what it was, and it was very frustrating. But eventually, we figured it out, and I like got a good drug treatment. And in the United States, it's kind of annoying to get the right drug. But I flew out and met the people who made the drug, and that saved my life. And like they all had like a great amount of passion. Like they cared about what they were doing. They cared about actually making a meaningful impact to people's lives. And so I started learning about clinical development. And over the past 3 years, 3 years this month actually, I paid off all my medical and college debt. And so like this year, I made like the podcast, and I've been learning about like different ways to like build things that can like meaningfully impact people's lives. And synthetic biology, this ability to create things in almost an unlimited way, is like really evocative to me. Like that and genetic engineering and genome engineering is very fascinating to me. And so like, that's where I think in the applied sense, like I think like for me personally, I like there's people that love research, like just researching. Like to me, I like to like talk to people who are good at that, because like I like to apply things. Like I'm like the guy who, like I see the research, now I want to see what I can do with it. So like I want to apply things as much as I can. And so that's what and I want to take graduate courses and finish that because I want to be able to do good things, but at the same time, like I can essentially teach myself anything I want now. And I have all the context through the podcast, so I can ask all the specific questions. So I have like 60 plus mentors to ask questions to if I want to, like junior mentors. Yeah. But yeah, so that's to answer your question of like why neuroscience, why synthetic biology and that type of thing now. Like those are the things that really interest me about it.
Yeah, it's quite a journey, definitely. Well, I'm glad to hear you're doing better. I didn't know about any of that. I don't know. Do you discuss that in another? No, it was a great story. Do you discuss that in detail in like another podcast or?
No.
Okay.
I'm trying to talk about it more. I don't know. Like I interviewed George Church, the genomic engineering guy, and he's one of the reasons why I exist. Because like his research allowed people basically to do genetic testing. Like before, like, I mean, like Human Genome Project, and he was one of the guys, like, of course, like anything to do with genetics. And so everyone who had like the same symptoms as me, like they basically screened them and they're like, hey, there's this thing over here that's not working right. And so they were able to like walk it down the road, like follow that stream down and figure out like the entire, like the different mechanisms and then make the drug from that. But so
you need a target, right? Exactly.
Yeah. So when I was talking to him, I thanked him and he was like, Lowell, you should tell people about that. Like it inspire them more because like when I was in school, my teachers were kind of, I'd say like a lot of them, I'd say like a third at least were kind of cruel about it. Like me going to the ICU and having to accommodate me to any extent.
Because you're a minor inconvenience probably. Yeah. Oh, I have to move this test for him.
Yeah. And I mean, I really didn't ask. I really didn't want to. Like my girlfriend had to make me. I just was like, well, I couldn't make it. And she was like, well, you were in the hospital. Like, but anyway, so it's just like it's a hard thing to talk about. And sometimes people ask really weird questions. But ultimately to ask the question, like I really haven't been talking about it. I talk about it a little bit, but I've been trying to like talk about it more. So I'm like more able to talk about it. Because like if people like George Church and like these people doing this really great research can at the end result save like my life, then there's people who are listening that are maybe like, hey, I want to save people's lives as well. Or there's something inside me that's always wanted to do something. And I think it eventually will impact people's lives very significantly. And maybe they'll be moved by it. I don't know. Like it's just, I'm experimenting now. If anyone listens or like, this guy is stupid, I didn't want to hear this, email me. You won't hurt my feelings, though I will cry a little bit on the inside.
It doesn't kill you. It makes you stronger, right?
You gonna sing to me? I've been almost singing like 3 different times when I answered your question, like the first 3 words or songs. Like I don't know if you realize this, but that's like the beginning of a song.
Oh yeah. Well, we've been speaking in memes for a little while. So.
Yeah, but to answer your question, no, I don't normally do it, but we'll see.
Yeah, I don't mean to like press you on the subject or anything. I just think that is like a super interesting and really applicable story to kind of your whole podcasting motivation and your motivation behind science and your self-education thereof. So yeah, I think it can be inspiring for a ton of people, and that's really what we're looking for as an end goal as like a basic research scientist, is that we can hand our knowledge off to someone who can apply it and then improve some people's conditions. And then some people's research is just downright figuring out, like we were talking about earlier, lifestyle choices and how that would affect longevity and aging of the brain. So that they can have a direct impact on people by motivating their change. Mm-hmm. It's a great thing about this kind of hobby, at least, is lets you reach out and maybe push the world a little bit in the way that you want it to go.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised. Like when I first started the podcast, and it'd be interesting to see what type of effects you've seen from it. But like, I thought it sucked. Like I just think everything I do kind of sucks. Like whatever. But I do it anyway. Like I consider everything a no until you try something. And so I was like, well, I'm going to do this anyway. And even if it does suck, I'll learn something.
Right.
But like day one, people were able to take their podcast episode, like the people I interviewed, and they took that and used it to get funding, which is like, I didn't think of that.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Like now I can use that as an argument to get people to talk to me. And some people have gotten jobs and there's like 2 people that like kind of jump to mind as like being able to benefit from this. There's like a group of like They didn't do it together, but I think of them as a group because they all contacted me at the same time. But there's like 20 women, like maybe like 15 women, like 5 men, who contacted me after this episode where a CTO of a healthcare startup talked about programming. And they essentially, he talked about it in a way that wasn't like, you input the code and then hit the bracket. Like he was like, oh, I really like it. It's like problem solving. Like you get to use a different tool set. And the great thing is, like he talked about it as if it was alive. And so these people, they emailed me and they told me that they like took his advice, like went on to Code Academy and started learning coding for the first time. And that like the women in particular, they thought that like coding before that point was more of like a masculine thing. And after that, they saw it was more of like an art, like an act of creation. And so like there are people now who are learning skills that they would never have been exposed to because of the podcast. And it's really exciting. Like I didn't know it would help people like that, but I'm like very happy that like my goal of like, I want to make one person's life better was achieved on like day one. And now it's like, oh God, I've achieved that. That came way too fast. What's my next one? But what about you? What were any like weird benefits you've seen, like any like goals that you've seen come to fruition?
Well, I think a big part of it for me is just kind of the networking or the encouragement it gives me to network rather, and kind of the increased perspective I get from talking to all these researchers. Because while science, I mean, the technical aspects and the actual things we need to memorize and know are very different across all these different fields. The common threads of properly planning an experiment, properly doing the background research for it, and connecting with people who have technical expertise in areas which you are like lacking, those skills are really universal. And I think that's why you do see a lot of PhDs being hired for not necessarily science jobs, is because they do have this kind of general skill and general way of thinking about how they're going to achieve their goals, and also just being really inspired by everyone I talk to and how passionate they are about their work and how hopeful they are, and how diligently they're clearly working, and how much they have it together, and it does kind of instill a feeling of hope in times in which some people are lacking that as a feeling. So I think overall it's just been a great experience connecting with people and learning the ins and outs of podcasting has in and of itself been really rewarding. It also, I think, is going to pay dividends down the road for my presentation skills, my public speaking skills, and these are all things that I'm absolutely going to have to do in a job search or presenting my research at conferences, etc. So it gets me to go that extra mile in terms of networking, which is really a great thing. If I didn't have this as an outlet, I think I probably wouldn't put quite as much energy into the networking aspect because I want to focus on my research. But you do really have to do both to succeed as a scientist, I think.
Well, I definitely see the value of the networking, like an excuse to talk to people, because there's a lot of people I talk to where I'm pretty sure they wouldn't want to talk to me. Like, not want to talk to me, but they just like they have very low bandwidth.
You're just some guy, and there's a sea of other guys. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. I keep getting complimented. Like people think I'm really good at networking with people now. It's like I don't know what you're talking about. This is very simple. I just send an email and then I call them. Like it's like I try. But I mean, I think that's the big thing. I think people think it's harder. Like whatever they want to do. Like a number of people have emailed me like, oh, I want to do A, B, and C. Do I need to get X, Y, and Z to do it? And it's like, why would you need that? Like, what would you need? What do you have today that would help you achieve those goals? And then like extrapolate from that. Because I think people like to set up like walls in front of them, like, oh, I need a PhD in wizardry or something like that to defeat, Voldemort. And it's like, no, you didn't. You just had to be the chosen one, or you just had to be like the right guy in the right time. But I think it's really interesting. Yeah.
Well, sorry.
You're good. What were you gonna say?
I mean, there's luck involved in a lot of these things, but it's a consistency too, right? And to be able to go out and just follow up with someone that you've emailed, it can take a lot. I mean, people think they don't have the time for it, and you do, but you just need to make the commitment, really.
Mhm.
It can take a lot of discipline rather, and some people get distracted. It's a busy world out there. There's too many things to look at on your phone and on the computer, so pretty easy to go off track. And this thing, like this podcast, has become a commitment in which, I mean, I love it, don't get me wrong, but it's also, I would definitely have gone off track had I not made such a commitment to the listeners and people who have been supporting us along the way.
Mhm. Well, my problem, maybe it'd be interesting to see if you might have the same problem since you're getting a PhD, but I don't like to do anything that's short term. I like things like, so anything I do, it's like, oh, I basically have dedicated the next 2 to 5 years to doing it. Like I'm learning the violin right now, and it's like it took me a while to decide on the instrument because it's like I will not stop for 2 to 5 years. Like doesn't
Why
matter
the
what it is.
violin after all of the?
Well, I tried a guitar and it doesn't make sense to me. Violin makes sense to me. Like it's simple. Like I don't know. To me, for some reason, it makes sense. Like you do some stuff with your fingers. It's very simplistic. I feel. For the guitar, you have to like. I like sausage fingers. I think, but yeah. I don't know why. It just kind of like fit. It just made sense to me. I don't have a good answer. I just picked it up and like the guy from Will Smith I played, and it kind of made sense. And it didn't. It sounded like cat screaming, but I also could understand I was playing Mary Had a Little Lamb. So, but
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, but and maybe to get to the question I was trying to ask, like like for me the podcast, I think it like as soon as I started it, like no matter how bad it was, and it's pretty nice I think, but like I would not stop for 2 years because I think people when they try something, and it's good to like try things, like there are things that I inherently do try, knowing that I'll only try them for 3 months to see to what extent I want to commit to like 2 to 3 years to them or something like that. But I think people give up too soon. Like whenever you start doing something, you're supposed to suck. If it was good, if it was easy, everyone around you would be good at it, and it wouldn't be worth your time.
Yeah, everyone would be doing it.
It's kind of like to the point where if I suck at something, I generally enjoy it because I know how thoroughly just enjoyable it's going to be great at it or to be good at it. Like I think 2 to 5 years, if you dedicate 2 to 5 years to anything, you'll be pretty good at it. You dedicate 10 years to it, you'll be the best at it. Like for the, setting aside like innate talent, I think. Like I think like you dedicate 10 years to something, and I think a lot of people our age, I assume you're about my age.
26 here.
Yeah, I'm 26. Yeah, high five. But
Nice. 92?
What?
92?
92?
Yeah.
Oh
92.
yeah, 1992. I was like, I didn't know
It was a good year.
I thought you were like trying to like multiply it or something. I went to math first. How does 26 equal 92? Is this like a thing I should know?
You've been doing too much cost analysis.
Yeah, 26. So I think a lot of people our age, like they think that there's like a race, or that like if I told, like I know one person in particular who's going to listen to this who has told me like the idea of spending 10 years on something makes them angry or like get upset, like, oh no, I'll waste my time. But it's like you're going to experience those 10 years anyway. Why not experience those 10 years and then be the best person in this thing and basically be the person who gets to dictate the terms of it for the future? Like that's amazing. I love that. But I don't know where we're going with this conversation anymore. I forgot, but I just wanted to say that. And do you have the same? Are you the same way? Because like you're getting a PhD, so to some extent, I think you're the type of person like once you start something,
in it for the long haul. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I have to be pretty selective about those things that I devote a lot of time, energy, and long-term thought on. Like I do a lot of things kind of sporadic. I do a lot of things, I will say also that. Hobbies include like video games. Haven't been paintballing in a while, although I've been doing that since like age 12, and it's about high time I got out. Jiu-jitsu for like 2 years, and getting good at all of these things. Yeah, it takes a long time, and you just got to keep going and keep doing it. I don't say, okay, I have to do this for 2 to 5 years. I think I gravitate towards things that I know I will almost always want to do. I'm going to always want to be playing paintball. I'm going to probably always play some sort of video game with my friends, helps us stay connected. And I'm going to always be doing jiu-jitsu for as long as I'm physically able. I think it's great for the mind and body as long as you don't go too hard, too fast. These things they have like payoffs, It's a similar thing as podcasting. They're not just for that like immediate gratification. Sometimes they can be a great stress relief, and they feel great in the moment. But yeah, it's something where I have like an ability to progress and get better in a lot of ways. At the very least, like jujitsu and paintball, sports that there are so many nuances to that, so much nuance too that you can draw on years of experience for. But I wouldn't say I always adopt that strategy, right? I try a lot of things out and then I drop them and I get busy with something else, and then I move back and forth between a lot of hobbies.
No, that's good. Like and maybe I was playing down, but like you do have to, like I do the same thing. Like, and maybe I was like being too like, if you've ever seen Lost, there's a guy on it called Jack, and like whenever he finds a problem, like he goes like Manic Jack, and he has to hit it. It's like sometimes I kind of like gravitate towards that type of thinking, but I do like micro experiments. I think it's good to like every 3 months to try something, like a series of new things. That's probably because I have a background in marketing. Like you reassess and do 80-20 analysis every 3 to 6 months. So, but I think it's good like to try new things. And like if you hate something, like just that's fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But I think not trying anything and then with the opinion that you'll hate it and not giving it its time to like prove itself to you, I think that's a problem. But I don't think either of us were doing that. But I was just as a general statement.
I do think a lot of people get discouraged when they see people post their results online, right? Like the internet has an inherent bias towards the extremely like successful generally, right? Like you're not going to see pictures of the average person showing up on an Instagram feed that often because there's a ton of average people and they don't generally have like exciting stuff to show the world. But what you will see are all the people who are in like exotic locations or flying airplanes upside down or stuff like that that's exciting, and you see like the top 1% of the population, and you're probably also seeing their top 1% of moments, and to compare against that is really unfair because you don't see the bottom 99% of their life, which was the work they did to get to that point. So when you see yourself not being effective at any skill and or activity, you'd be like, well, I'm never going to be that good. So you get discouraged pretty easily. I don't know where I was going with that.
No, there's a great quote, and I forget who says this, but you're praised in public for what you spent years mastering. And
that does sound familiar. I wouldn't be able to tell you who.
It's probably like one of those self-help people. But what games do you play? Like video games? I play video games too.
Been doing a fair bit of. Well, League is probably the constant. League of Legends. It's a great game for connecting with friends because a lot of my close friends have played it or still play it. And teams of 5 make it a pretty good accessible game for getting groups of guys together. Unlike those late nights. Fond memories for sure, but looking more towards the Battlefield series for a similar reason. Have played PUBG, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds in the past, and then sometimes with my family I'll play Civ 5, although we haven't done that in a while because it's been hard to get everyone on at the same time. Turn-based games also take way too long. But in general, I find I like either kind of combat games or strategy games or some sort of mix between them. Anything that's multiplayer or cooperative and things I can hop on like a Discord server with the buddies and just kind of kick back and catch up with everyone while we're relaxing. What about you?
I was playing this game before we talked, if I'm being honest. It's called Natural Selection 2. It's RTS. I don't know if you ever heard of this. It's RTS and first-person shooter. So
interesting.
So it's like Aliens, the movie. There's like alien creatures, and they have like a commander hive creature. Have you ever seen Aliens? I'm gonna make a bunch of references. Have you ever seen this?
I've seen like bits and pieces of so many of the movies, and I get them all confused. So I know like generally what they look like.
Well, they don't look like that. I'll use the analogies they used in the movie. So like there's a queen and then there's a bunch of like other people on the alien team. They can be like, they all have different skills, right? Because they're aliens and they have like different things. And then there's the humans, which are humans, and they have like a commander. And then there's like a commander on both teams that are like, they're in charge of like resource management and like building things and like getting upgrades and doing these things and like kind of like managing the team. And then there's the people in the FPS, like the battlefield can go out and shoot people. They have to go out and kill the other hive. And it's basically it's basically a game of chess. Like who can go out and kill the other king, the other like, checkmate piece.
Mhm.
But then like it's not like chess piece versus chess piece. It's like having chess pieces on one side, and then like the Marines are like normal chess pieces, and then like the other team are basically like shogi or like their own weird things. But they like things kind of link up. But it's a lot of fun. I play that all the time. It's
So is it a multiplayer or is it a single player experience?
multiplayer. Yeah,
Okay,
totally
so
multiplayer.
so you have some person controlling like research management, and then like 3 other people are like kind of the drones going out and in the field, or am I misunderstanding?
It's like 16 people versus 16 people. One person in the command chair. 16 people with shotguns, machine guns, jetpacks, like armored mech suits, or in skulks, which are like little tiny aliens that can run on walls, or that flying aliens that can fly around, or like building aliens that can build things. And like everyone kind of has like their own thing, but the commander basically like tells people what to do, puts down the buildings, but then the FPS people have to go up and like build them,
Mm-hmm.
and then like they have to go kill the aliens, and they have to like teleport around and do stuff. It's a lot of fun actually. It's especially if you like that type of like bug hunt type thing, because like a person who's good at playing the humans is not going to be as like not necessarily going to be as good as playing alien, because it's very different dynamics, and strategies are very different as well. But it's a lot of fun, and they're usually I got mine for free off a Humble Bundle, but it's not.
I love this. Yeah.
They also made they made a game that people made a game. It's where like they crashed Subnautica. They made Subnautica. If you're familiar with that.
Can't say I am.
Oh,
I pretty much just stick to games my friends play. I let them figure out what the good ones are, and then I hop on and buy whatever they're playing. It's again kind of a dual purpose hobby.
Makes sense. I would recommend Natural Selection too, then, because then you can do the commandering stuff, and then you can also do the like shooting stuff, and then it's
imagine it's a little aggravating if the commander doesn't know what they're doing, right?
Oh yeah.
Why'd you put that building there? It's just gonna get wrecked immediately.
It's really easy for a commander to lose the game, but you also can kick the commander out of the chair and put someone else in there.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, there's like mechanisms in place, but then if you have a group of people you're playing with, then you just jump in, then you kind of control everything.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, and then if you like real like grand strategy, we're like going kind of down the weeds on this, but Europa Universalis 4 and Crusader Kings 2, but Europa Universalis 4 is really fantastic. It's basically you play as a country through like the 1800s to the early 1900s, and you find like 1400s to 1800s or whatever it was, and you like basically you find countries and you like colonize. It's a 4X strategy game. It's a lot of fun. It's very strategy-rific, and you can play it on multiplayer and like have fun like wiping out your friends' countries and their people and their cultures and their religion. And it's a fun game. But those are my recommendations. If you want, it does take a little bit to get into. It's not. Is it turn-based? No, it's not turn-based. So you don't have to worry about that. It's kind of turn-based, but not really. It's like you can control the speed. Like you can go really fast or really slow. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to check them out.
Yeah, we went too far on this, I think. It's my bad.
It's all right. No, people like to hear kind of about. I mean, everyone's real people who comes on the podcast, right? And I always try and ask, like, what are your hobbies outside of lab? Because I know everyone likes to claim that they're always in lab, but they're not, nor should they be. And I think whatever balances you out as a person can be an asset towards how you perform when you're in the office or in lab or wherever you are.
That's true. Then I have like 2 questions before we probably should wrap it up. I don't know how long yours are, but the one question is, what is something you're like either like weirdly good at that either no one would believe you or that you tend not to tell people that's like your special ability?
My special ability.
Yeah, people are usually good at something, and it's like something really weird.
I don't know. I don't know what that would be. I mean, I think generally creative, but that's not exactly that special, nor is
Well,
it necessarily that secret.
well, it doesn't have to
uh,
be like. I guess I framed the question properly. It's just like something that you're really good at, like something that if it is unique to you, like, but at the same time, it's like a outlier ability that you're like weirdly specially good at. Like some people, they can roll a dice and always land on 20, like a nat 20. Uh, I've met people like that. I don't want to play games with them, but the, yeah. So being creative is like yours. Then.
Generally, this is going to seem like a pretty contradictory answer, but I do think I'm fairly quick to think on my feet when I enter. Uh, I should say, I think I'm quite effective in a flow state.
Mm.
Now, I'm not so effective at inducing that flow state all the time, but once I do get into flow, nearly unstoppable. And the flow states are something that I should do some more reading on at some point too. But got a real backlog of stuff of papers on my desk at the moment.
I actually studied. I was in a research lab that studied flow and how to induce it. And
Mhm.
on my podcast, we interviewed. I say we in the royal sense. There's not another person. We interviewed a lady who has found a way to like combine AI with brain monitoring to figure out how to tap into flow more often. And like it's
Mhm.
really good to like
Neurofeedback, right?
yeah. And it's like I'll like send it your way. But there's like a ton of literature. If you wanted to like poke she has a PhD in it. So if you want to
Mhm.
like poke one person, and she'd probably respond to you and give you links and stuff if you want to learn more about it, or you can
For
just listen
sure,
to
I'd
her
love
talk
to.
about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I think I see your point. So you're like a Terminator once you're in flow.
I have had it not doesn't necessarily have to be in an aggressive situation. I have had people tell me I should have been an assassin, but that would not have been a fun job in my opinion.
Yeah, killing people.
As much fun as playing video games is, the real thing would not be a good time, I believe.
You
Although
gotta hide the bodies.
generally I do tend towards aggressive combat like sports, the jiu-jitsu and paintball being no exception. But they tend to drive me into flow, and I think that's why I like them so much. In that there's kind of a very strong penalty for me making an error, and so that induces norepinephrine, adrenaline release, and then bang, I'm in flow state, and reaching that potential that I love to get to.
Hmm. I wouldn't say judo's aggressive. I think judo's like judo's like the essence of flow. It's not really about aggression. It's more about redirection, right?
Yeah, no, all
I don't
those martial arts are, but when you have someone who has trained longer than you and they're your size or bigger and they're pinning you down to the mat, it's pretty hard to not have a physiological response to that. And
Well,
then
yeah.
your senses become a lot more alert and aligned. The task itself, yeah, actually, it does flow. I mean, they call it rolling in jiu-jitsu because you are actually rolling. You're transitioning weight over and over and over again. And the tables can turn quite rapidly in that. And it gets to be really, really enticing.
Hmm. Well, I wrestled for like
Hmm.
6 or so years, so I kind of like understand the concept of
Yeah.
judo. You probably should get into it. It might be fun. We can
Well,
judo each other.
there's judo and there's jujitsu. So I mean, I end up rolling with people who are in both camps. Judo is more of throws and like they tend to do a lot of stand up work, and that's where they destroy me. I always know who's double going to double practices of judo and jujitsu because when we do stand up takedowns, I get thrown on the mat pretty quick. Both all about balance and leverage, of course.
Hmm.
Just different styles.
Yeah. Well, I like your special abilities. Then the last question I like to ask is if you could, because I'm doing a series on immortality, which I probably referenced too many times in this, but
I like it. Common themes are always nice.
yeah, if you ever liked really like crazy themes, like really intricate books, you should check out. I don't know if you're into epic fantasy, but there's a book called Malazan Book of the Empire. Like it's like a 10 book series, and like every line in that series, it gets carried through to a different thing in the later book, and they're like Harry Potter, like really really thick books. But anywhoozles, the question I have is if you could give longevity to anyone, and just in like classical sense longevity, not like an extra 300 years, just give them as much life as they want and health span as well. That if you can give 3 people that feature, present or past, and they can't be someone you love or a family member. What would those three people be, and why?
Okay. See the people that I think about in terms of, like, I always like to think about kind of like big picture impacts of my research, right? And ultimately, a lot of longevity is going to have to tackle the aging of the brain. So I was trying to think about what are the brains that I want to protect. This is gonna be a pretty stereotypical answer, but I think Elon Musk and what he has done in the renewable energy space is really commendable and necessary. I think if we want to tackle like the greater goals and challenges that climate change is going to present to us as a species. Another one, I think Bill Gates has done an incredible amount of philanthropic good in Africa. I mean, the guy's like getting rid of a bunch of diseases at once. He's started a huge tech company, which we all have our problems with Microsoft, but you know, still depend on their products every day. And then he went on and just decided he was going to cure a bunch of the world's diseases. I think that's pretty cool too. I'd like to see him keep doing that. But again, we do come into the topics of health span and all of that. Third, let's see. You did say in the past as well, right?
Yeah, you can pick Einstein if you wanted. He's cheating though. I consider him like the Neo of our Matrix. He knows too much.
Yeah, I mean, he knows a lot, but I don't know why Einstein doesn't really stand out to me. I guess maybe a bad taste in the mouth from the nuclear bomb. And I know that when he came up with those theories, he was really like sad about how things would go with that. Of personal, yeah, I know. A personal interest that would be really neat. Nikolai Tesla might also be one to. I know as a person, he probably wasn't like necessarily the friendliest, but his inventions seem to have a pretty great impact or potential as well. Then, oh, you know what? I might replace him with, and I don't know this kid's name, but he developed a thorium salt reactor in his garage. Thorium salts being a type of nuclear energy fuel that harnesses basically spent fuel rods from typical uranium fuel cells for power plants, nuclear power plants, if I'm getting this right. I don't know the exact science as well as I should perhaps talk about this. But he designed one of these reactors in his garage, and these are kind of systems that you can put in place that could power a whole city block for practically eternity. And they're pretty small, size of like a porta potty, for example, or a very large refrigerator. And this kid was like 17 when he made one in his garage. So I don't know that he's 100% proven himself yet, but I think he's got enormous potential, and that also seems to be something that the human race could use.
Mm-hmm. Just as a note, I feel like if Tesla was given that gift, you're basically making a supervillain. Like,
yeah, that's why I was backtracking on that a little bit.
Yeah.
He's maybe not the best person, but if you could channel that energy and potential, I think that'd be great.
Yeah. Well, he needs like a mentor. His mentor was supposed to be Edison, but that guy was kind of a brick. But
yeah, just a friend maybe is all he needed.
Yeah, he just needs a friend.
Like Megamind.
Yeah. Oh, I like that movie. All right, but for people listening in, what would they get out of your podcast? Like if they were like to be like, hey, this Conor McGregor guy who's not a boxer. What? I don't know what your last name is. I hope it's not Wander. But is it Wander?
Oh no, you've got me.
Is it really?
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was. I'm not good at names today.
I don't go by a pen name or whatever that is.
Yeah. Okay. But anyways, all right. So, what? I don't mean to insult your name, by the way. But what would they get out of your podcast that you think would entice them to listen? From my side.
Well, I think what you get with Straight from a Scientist is you get these opinions, these insights, all straight from the researchers that are working on the relevant experience. So I don't like to go on about things that I don't know a whole lot about. I'd prefer to just ask the experts. And our episodes focus on the experts or rising experts in their field. A lot of our interviewees are students, and they're driving our current understanding, like the human race's current understanding of various diseases, of various technical hurdles, of electronics, of ecology. It's all over the place, and they can tell you what it's like to kind of be at the forefront of the research. So if you want to know what that day-to-day experience is like, what the super exciting things are in a given field, what are the things to look out for, and just what do we know as a base level and a base understanding of the biological mechanisms of like nutritional neuroscience or the gut-brain axis, for example. We try and source that knowledge as close to the well as possible, so it's as fresh and it's like unadulterated. Doesn't have a lot of people translating it, whether or not people want to mess up the end result. That it's always a game of telephone with things. And so with these conversations, we're just trying to bring that out there, clean and pure. So yeah, that's probably what people would get out of it.
And they're fun. I like them.
Oh, I have a good time doing it. I always come out learning like so much, and then having a bunch of reading to do afterwards and things to follow up on. So yeah, it's a great time.
Yeah, I would for my own, I would say similar things. I would think I think the difference is I would say like 80% of the people on my podcast are scientists that have started a startup, so they're applying it. Though there are a number of them that are just like researchers, like working in labs and stuff as well. But the big thing is you're going to see how they translated it, like what made them like make that step, why them, and you're going to basically follow along through what they're passionate about. So even if you don't understand artificial intelligence or synthetic biology, like, I don't understand those things very well, but we talk about what they care about, and it's really easy to like kind of latch on and understand what is interesting, what is neat. And by the end of it, and there's usually book recommendations in the show notes and that type of thing that they've shared with me. And so like, it's like you get to learn what their life is like, what they're doing every day, like how they do it. So you get like a little bit of inspiration, a little bit of education. And then at the end of it, it's like, hey, I can learn more about this, which is fantastic as well. And then you can email them if you want. Like most of them have their contact information, like their LinkedIn or something. And they always like people emailing them and letting them know if they have any questions.
Yeah, I think it's podcasting is really the only way to do some of this stuff, and it's interesting that the scientific community has taken so long to get to this point where people are ready to talk about their science, but it's very easy to be shy about it. I'm not gonna lie. Was that ever a barrier to you when starting podcasting? I know there is this general stereotype that scientists are more introverted, and I don't know whether you would consider yourself intro or extra, and I don't know if those things are necessarily real personality types and set in stone, or whether they're somewhat malleable in terms of development and the way you can train yourself. But did you find that to be a challenge in terms of putting the podcast together? Did you find, like, what were your major challenges in actually putting the series together, or were you pretty much press record and go with it?
I'm pretty loquacious. I think people were reticent. The difference is it's unless you say no to me, I'm going to keep poking you. And then if you say no to me, I'm going to ask you why. And then until you answer me, I'm going to poke you some more. And then so by the end of it, you'll just say yes. I don't know. It's not maybe not the best answer, but there's been a number of people who have been reticent, and like they didn't know who I was because I didn't even have the podcast. I was like, hey, I want to do this. Like stranger man number one, stranger man Lowell would like to talk to you and record your voice and what have you, and then potentially put it and share it with thousands of people. And a number of people were just like, yeah, sure, why not? But a number of people were reticent and needed some relaxing, I'd say. But I wouldn't say it was difficult. I would say it was like really fun. Like I kind of enjoy challenges. I think it's fun when people say no. I think it's fun when people say yes. I learned stuff either way. I wish I had like, oh, this is really crappy. People have been mean to me. I think that's kind of fun too. It's really hard to hurt my feelings, I think. Maybe it's like something I should probably state here. And I tend to take events that most people would take as negative and try to find like something funny about them so I can be able to laugh and not cry about it. But like there were people who were quite mean, and I've sent them episodes that I've done, and they were like, "Oh, I'm sorry for treating you that way. I thought you were just like a dumbass." And it's like, "Oh, no, it's fine. I'm sure." And I looked at the email I sent them. I was like, "This is kind of a bad email. They have grounds for this. I kind of wrote like an idiot." But I think the big thing is just getting out of your own way, being straight to the point. And I think when you're very clear on what you want to achieve with someone, people will help you. When you say, "Hey, I want to help people be inspired and educated and doing things, and I think what you're doing is really inspire worthy. Would you be up for like a little quick phone call or like discuss this in an email?" Most people are not going to say no to the opportunity of talking about something that they care about. So I think, there was definitely like figuring out how to do recording, which is new to me. Figuring out how to like logistics and time management, something I've always been really good at, especially since I did like freelance consulting. Like I'm just really good at that type of thing. I wouldn't say there's anything that would be particularly frustrating. I just kind of enjoyed it. I enjoy talking to everyone. I did not answer your question very well. I'm sure there are things that like frustrated me when people.
No, it may not necessarily, there may not have been any big barriers. And I think looking back from my own experience, there wasn't any one big barrier. They're just, little small things that you're inevitably going to overcome if you persevere at things like this.
I remembered one. Okay. Gatekeepers. I hate gatekeepers. They piss me off. So I do the polite method. If there's a CEO I want to talk to, I start at the front door like any gentleman would. I ring the doorbell and I say, "Hello, is Mr. Smith home or Mrs. Smith?" And they say, "No, he's not. He or she is not in." And I can hear them. They're upstairs. I know they're there. But I'm like, "Okay, that's fine. Would you mind giving them this letter?" And then they say, "Of course, I already had a conversation with them about this and they're not interested." They're lying. They're lying to you. I don't like that. I don't like being lied to. But so like I'll just get the CEO's I already have the CEO's personal contact information. I was probably either referred to them or it exists somewhere. And then I'll email them separately and I say, "Hey, by the way, I'm going to contact you." And then by the time I hear back from the gatekeeper saying, "Oh, I've talked to them and they're not interested," I've already interviewed the CEO. So it's like that pisses me off. Like it's clear you didn't relay the message, and that's fine. A part of like a gatekeeper's job is to like filter out, not ensure that the person's time isn't wasted. But if I can get around you, and that person is like not only are they open to it, but they were excited at the idea of helping and inspiring other people, then you weren't screening right. And and then like the attitude that they have can sometimes irritate me. I'm really big in customer service, so I really think that like people need to be nice, especially when like you're kind of like one of the first people talk to when they
case of a company.
Yeah. But I'd say that was the biggest thing. But it was just more like I hate that. I hate bad customer service. Like it really pisses me off. But there you go. I remembered it. There's one.
No, that's good.
But I got around it in a funny way.
Yeah, that's a good actionable strategies that you can use. I don't have to talk to that many CEOs, but that's definitely something that I want to do in the future because there's a ton of people here to tap into in the Research Triangle Park area.
Is it where the Illuminati live? Because you said triangle so many times recent. Like when you were talking about it, I was like, is he getting like nickel for every time? Or is there like triangle in the name?
No, it's it's a colloquialism for the area.
Mm. All right. Well, did you have any questions you had for me that you wanted to know? I'm very riveting. Or we can end it.
I didn't write any down, if I'm being honest.
That's fine.
I didn't know exactly what shape we wanted this whole thing to take. But are you really excited about any pending episodes or upcoming interviews that people should know about, or do you keep that all under wraps before it happens?
I think I'm starting like this Patreon page, and then I think I'd share it with those people so they can ask me questions because I want to involve more of my listeners, but then I want to like involve people that are being a little bit more supportive. So like my super fans.
Yeah, we were thinking of doing that too. Give them access to give interview questions and submit them if they're supporters.
Yeah, it's different than like some person is like, "Oh, I hear you're interviewing this person that I wish I could interview. I'm gonna ask this stupid question," versus like, "Hey, I'm a longtime listener. I love what you're doing and I support you.
Exactly.
Like I want that person, even if, in
They're
whatever form.
invested in it.
Yeah, I want like that investment. Like, oh, I've been here for a while. I know what type of questions you like to ask, what you like to get about, and this is what I want to hear. I want to do that, but I have no problem sharing. I just I usually do it through like the newsletter when I tell people what's going on, but I think the Patreon page, which additionally, all the episodes I'm doing for like the new series that are coming out, I'm making crossword puzzles and word banks, and it's only on there. But it's like the New York Times. My girlfriend and I are kind of nerdy people, so we're making word banks out of the key terms that we talk about, like you'll have a sentence like, what is synthetic biology, and what is and following up on that one, who is the scientist that was talked about in this that is doing blah blah blah, and then you like usernames. But I don't know, if you're not like nerdy like that, that's fine too. But to answer your question, George Church, he is fantastic. I loved talking to that guy. He was so nice, and I didn't think he would talk to me, if I'm being honest, but he did, and we talked about so many cool things. And it's a weird thing, and this is probably not something that people would believe since I'm talking a little differently, but when I'm in my normal like state of nature, I talk really slow. Like I don't really feel the need to talk fast. If I'm being just myself, like I won't really say all that much. Like if we're hanging out, I'll probably say like 3 or 4 words like in an hour, just because I like to listen a lot. But when I was talking to George, like I realized we kind of talk similarly. Like our cadence was like, and he talks very calmly. So that's like, and on re-listen, it was like, was I marrying him too much? But it was kind of funny. But his episode's really fantastic. We get into like, they're putting DNA into apples. Like they're taking like the Wikipedia and putting it in DNA of apples. They're making
Store it, right?
Yeah, to store it, and because like Eden and bringing us back to wisdom as like a poetic thing,
symbol,
like, yeah, and they're making it so that pig organs can be transferred into humans. They are working on making it so we will never be susceptible to viruses ever again unless it was designed by a human to specifically mess with humans. That's really cool. And they're designing a way to attach information onto DNA and then hook it up to neuron cells so you can access it like a Google search in your brain.
Wow.
That's how I described it. I'm probably butchering that, but that one's really fascinating. I like that guy. He's amazing. And then I'm working on the longevity series, which everyone I've talked to, like it's some crazy stuff going on. And then citrus greening, which is like just here's the takeaway. If like people are like, this is the first one that's going to come out, it's like the next big one is like first big one that I've ever done. Here's the takeaway. So everyone has seen the movie Interstellar, like where there's that blight that's like wiping out crop after crop after crop, which eventually would wipe out the human race, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that basically is a runaway disease with these monocultures, wiping them out. There's no hope for humanity, so we have to leave or just die. And so the question I pose is, what if all those things were happening, and what if all those things started happening almost 10 years ago, and that is in fact what has happened with citrus. Like citrus is being hit with a disease, and in the United States, 60 to 70% of citrus, oranges, etc., have been wiped out by
That's
this.
terrifying.
Yeah,
Wow.
and there's nothing they can do for the most part besides quarantine and those type of strategies. And here's a little factoid before I ask you a question or like see if there's anything else. But in Florida, like what is Florida known for?
Oh, the orange, of course.
Right. They've had 70 to like 80 to 90% of the oranges wiped out, never coming back. In Florida.
It's pretty sad.
Yeah, right? But yeah, that's what I'm really excited about because we get into like it's like a radio lab or freakonomics type episode. I've interviewed a bunch of experts and I weave it through a narrative of like personal experiences and what happened and how it is not being stopped. But it might be one day.
I should hope so, yeah.
Yeah.
Got some top minds on it.
Yeah. What about you? Any special ones?
Well, so we just did one on the microbiome, gut-brain axis, and I think it really effectively lays out kind of the relevant factors in a healthy gut microbiome, things you should be looking for, and it gives like some really good tangible advice for people who are maybe trying to start learning about the microbiome. And we're trying to work on these like full media packages for some of these podcasts we're putting out. Episode 31 being a prime example of the guest we had, Miguel. He's a researcher in gut microbiome and the gut-brain axis. He recently wrote a review, which we did a breakdown, and I'm currently working on some graphical abstracts, some graphical representations of said breakdown, so that people can kind of digest the science in written form from his review, the primary source, his podcast, the primary source, but then also more accessible. We have a vocab list, we have a breakdown, and we're also going to have like this kind of a storyboard infographic to understand the whole thing in sequence. And so I'm really interested to see how people prefer to digest that information, if any ways are a little more effective at doing this, or if it really is the whole package. And we're hoping to do this in future episodes as well. So I'm gonna be with HIV researcher on Friday, who I've interviewed in the past, but definitely going to be asking him some questions, a little more detailed questions about the nitty-gritty of HIV research and how we can get like past the next hurdle in HIV therapies. So yeah, it keeps me busy, keeps me dreaming. So I'm loving it.
That's fantastic. I'm also experimenting with the written form of things, and the citrus greening one, I'm seeing if it'll go into Nat Geo, which might be
right.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I'm also making a YouTube channel about like kind of like, I don't know if you like SciShow news, but then I'm taking like individual, like the pig organ thing, like I'll take that and then make like a 9-minute and 99-second clip, like video explaining it, so like anyone can understand it, which is like fun for me because then I get to learn how to explain it simply. And then if I get it wrong, people can make fun of me, which is how I believe it should be, so that I am socially pressured to be better.
Exactly.
Yeah. But that's like
a little bit of penalty.
yeah, penalty box. But if there are no questions, I'll hit the little stop recording button.
I think that's all I got. I think we covered a lot of what's great about podcasting, what we love about our specific shows, and like why we got into it, right?
Yeah.
Checking a lot of boxes there.
I'm gonna hit the button.
All right.
That's going to be it here for us at the Straight From Scientist podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and especially if you provided feedback or are a sponsor of the podcast. If you'd like to become a supporter, you can go to patreon.com/SFS podcast. Another way to support the podcast is through our affiliation with Plant Warrior. So Plant Warrior produces 100% natural vegan protein, does not contain any whey nor any artificial sweeteners, but it still has all 20 essential amino acids. And on top of that, Plant Warrior pledges to plant 1 tree for every protein bag purchased. It's 100% money back guaranteed, so you can try it risk-free, and in the meantime support the SFS podcast as well as get a tree planted. If you want to support the SFS podcast by buying a bag of Plant Warrior protein, you can use the discount code SFS10 for 10% off. Just make sure that the discount applies when you go to checkout and won't apply in your cart. Thanks all for listening again, and we hope you enjoy each and every episode.